All right, good morning, guys. 22nd of Feb, 2:30 in the morning, Sunday. Getting in our Stairmaster, 40 minutes, working up a sweat, starting the day right with activity, as you all should be. The best way to learn delayed gratification and to rewire your brain to become less of a dopamine seeking vessel, meaning constantly chasing dopamine without having to work for it, can really fuck your brain up. So by starting the day with some hard work, delayed gratification, and doing something physical before you reward yourself with food is, like I said, a great way to rewire your brain to not seek easy dopamine. So, as usual, got my ass up, washed my face, took my fat burners, and here we are, grinding away, working on my ultimate self, working on the delayed gratification, and starting the day off right. We're going to finish up here. We've got another 8 minutes, and then we're going to hit the streets for some steps. I'll see you all there. So, stairs boxed off, out on the streets now. First 3K steps. Groundhog Day, baby. You knew it was coming. You could literally watch one day of my life and then be confident in knowing that that's what every day looks like. I want to touch on a conversation that I had with a client just yesterday. And the reason why I want to touch on this conversation is because it was quite profound, in the sense that it really highlighted the differences in what people perceive hitting their goals to look like. Now, morning, bro, how are you? Good, bro. I'm not the only one out here at 2:30 in the morning. So anyways, the conversation I had with this gentleman was around habits. People see what I do and they think that to achieve their goals, there has to be something very extreme happen to your lifestyle, which isn't true. Looking at me do what I do isn't a reflection on what most of you need to do to be hitting your goals. You don't need to be getting up at 2 in the morning. You don't need to be taking all these peptides. You don't need to be taking anabolics. You don't need to be training as hard as I do 5 days a week. What you need is to master the fundamentals, the basics. This gentleman that is my client, he came to me because he simply wanted to lose some body fat. And as you can imagine, he followed me for quite some time prior to jumping on board as a client. And he said to me, I don't think I would ever be able to do what you do. And I told him, I said, that's okay. You don't need to do what I do in order to achieve the results that you are looking for. What we've been doing is simply making some small but very meaningful lifestyle changes. This gentleman works FIFO, like a lot of my clients actually do. And what we've begun doing to get his fat loss journey going is just simple things like rewiring his thoughts around snacking, food intake in general, and basic exercise goals. So let's use the example that we have with him. He thought that it was okay to snack on things like nuts and avocado because they're quote unquote healthy. What I told him was that, one, snacking in general, in my opinion, is silly. I think that you should have your baseline diet, your meals that you eat every day, and that's it. And if you want to call one of those meals a snack, then that's fine. But understand that if it's programmed in and it makes sense and it ticks the boxes of the goal at hand, meaning in his case, an energy deficit to lose body fat, that's all that matters. So instead of snacking on nuts, I told him, instead of doing that, let's just eat your meal plan, 4 meals per day, focused around protein and making sure that we aren't intaking too much energy. So we cut out the snacking of the nuts, okay? Because as you all may or may not know, nuts are very high in calories, very calorie dense, meaning that it doesn't take much to overeat them and therefore put you in an energy equilibrium or potentially even an energy surplus. Because obviously if you're trying to lose body fat, you want to be in an energy deficit. So we stopped snacking on nuts. We focused on just eating the 4 meals a day. We focused on implementing some basic exercise goals per day, like 10,000 steps and getting into the gym 3 or 4 days a week. And voila, fat loss started happening. And all that he could say was, wow, I had no idea that snacking on nuts was a bad thing. Now, when I say bad thing, I don't want to demonize any particular food group. But again, knowing that nuts are very calorically dense and can rack up calories very quickly, by simply removing the idea in one's head that snacking on these nuts or anything calorically dense, for example, only leads to shooting yourself in the foot, because you can easily undo hundreds and hundreds of calories worth of energy deficit by snacking on nuts. If you have a handful, for example, that's maybe even just 30 grams, which would fit in the palm of your hand quite easily, and you do that 3 times, 4 times per day, that could easily be over 100 grams of nuts. And if you look up on any database or on the back packaging of any nut, you're looking at about 50 to 60 grams of fat per 100 grams and 500 to 600 calories per 100 grams. So by simply cutting that out, boom, 500 to 600 calories less per day that you're intaking. To some people, this might be quite shocking to think, oh my God, but I thought nuts were healthy. Yes, nuts by nature contain, micronutrients and monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats. But that doesn't negate the fact that you're still intaking 50 to 60 extra grams of fat and 500 to 600 calories extra per day that you easily are just throwing down your gob in, 2 or 3 minutes. So boom, straight away, 500 to 600 calorie deficit by removing the nuts. This is enough to get fat loss going for most anybody. This could even be something as simple as cutting out sugary drinks or full fat milk in your diet. Small changes can go a very, very long way. Anyways, my point being is that when you start to focus on the fundamentals and the things that really matter, like, for example, cutting out snacking on calorically dense things, you immediately shift your body into a caloric deficit, which is all you need to get fat loss going, especially if you've done this for most of your life where you're snacking and things like that. So just a cool little insight that a lot of you could probably implement in your day-to-day life is cutting out those extra calories that you think are okay, where in reality, they're actually just bottlenecking your results. So there's no 2:30 a.m. Stairmaster sessions. There's no training until you're almost dead, like I do to myself. You're doing little things, like implementing some walks during the day to get, say, 10,000 steps. You're cutting out the 50 to 60 extra grams of fat from snacking. And that in and of itself is going to drive a ton of fat loss straight off the rip without needing to do anything crazy. So I thought that was an interesting little bit of information to share with you guys. Small changes can go a very long way, especially in the beginning of somebody's journey looking to get in better shape. This gentleman has now lost 4, maybe 5 kilograms in the space of only 3 to 4 weeks in working with me, just by doing something as simple as cutting out those extra little bits that rack up during the day. So what my point here is that when you see me doing all this crazy shit, like getting up super early in the morning, doing Stairmaster, taking peptides, taking fat burners, taking anabolic androgenic steroids, this is only me doing what is required for me to get into contest shape, to carry around super physiological amounts of muscle mass. For your average person, this isn't required. What I do is based off a few things. It's based off the fact that my goals are very extreme, okay? Because let's be honest, being over 100 kilos in competition shape isn't normal. Your average bloke just wanting to look good for the beach or for the missus doesn't require crazy protocols or drug intake. It just requires some basic lifestyle changes. So, ramble done. Just wanted to kind of let you know how easy it can actually be to reach your goals if you're starting off from a position where you're just implementing some very small changes and seeing that by doing so, how easy it can actually be to make fat loss happen. Because most of my clients are in that boat. They just want to lose body fat. Very easy task to do, especially if all you're doing is wiping out some little habits here and there. Okay, we're just about finished up our walk now. We're going to go inside, do our usual business, which is abs, morning drink, health supplements, etc. And then meal one. And today we have legs on the cards. So I'll take you all along for whatever it is I decide to take you along for. And you'll see my day pan out as it normally would. So I'll see you guys in the next clip, whatever that may be. Alrighty, just out now, knocking out second round of steps. We have spent a little bit of time this morning working, cleared out that WhatsApp, which is always an amazing feeling. Then once we've done these steps, we're going to have our pre-workout meal, then make all of our pre-workout drinks and potions and pills. And then we are going to head over to Genesis for leg day, baby. Now, I'm not sure if I mentioned on my video, but last leg day, I actually tweaked my adductor a little bit and it's been corked for the past few days. So we've been putting BPC TB500 into it twice per day, big 2 to 3 milligram doses into it, and it feels about 90% better today. But we are going to play it safe. We are going to stick to the higher rep ranges today, do a lot of pre-exhaustion. So I'll take you through a leg session where I am trying to make sure that I don't snap up an adductor. So keep an eye out for that one. But anyways, finish up these steps, get home, eat, pre-workout. See you in the car on the way to the gym. Alright, so as you've seen, we just fueled up at 7-Eleven, and it would be absolutely criminal to not pick up one of these bad boys while we're there. So Lando Norris, and as usual, the ritual, double park. We've got legs today, feeling a little bit tired. You get that for being 7 weeks out. But nothing that a bit of caffeine and nicotine can't fix. Number one, both menthol flavor. Number two, all right, leave me a comment, by the way. Have you ever double parked your 6mg nicotines? Look at us fucking drug addicts. All right, and a sip of this bad boy before we hit the road. As we all know, that first sip of the day is always the life-changing sip. Oh, fantastic. All right, let's head over to Genesis now for some legs. Let's go. Alright, we just arrived here at Genesis. Time to put my shit away and hook into legs. Let's go. Okay, so starting off our leg day here with the adductor machine. Now, like I explained earlier, I did hurt my adductor 3 days ago on the leg press. So we're making sure that we get our adductors super warm. Luckily, putting a fuckload of BPC and TB500 into the adductor over the past few days made it so I could barely even feel it at all. But still, we're being cautious. So we did 2 sets of 20 to 25 reps on the adductors and got everything super, super warm, super stretched out just to make sure. So 2 sets there. And then we moved on to the seated hamstring curl. So seated hamstring curl, could feel my adductor a tiny bit, but that's mainly just because obviously I'm sitting on top of it, but it wasn't an issue. It didn't affect my performance on the seated leg curl at all. So we banged out 3 sets, I believe, on the seated hamstring curl, and that got our knees nice and warm for the quad work to come. So I always like to do some hamstring and some adductor work before I move into the rest of my session, just because it makes the knees and everything and the hips all feel really good before I move into any compound stuff. And for quads, I always also like to start with leg extensions for the same reason. One, pre-exhausting the quads for me allows me to not have to use as much load on compound lifts. And secondly, it also warms my knees up, make sure that I don't get any like sore patella or anything like that, because I do sometimes suffer from a little bit of patella tendonitis. So 3 sets on the quad extension here. We went about 15 to 20 reps across all 3 sets. Make sure to really squeeze the shit out of them, get a ton of blood in there. As you can see by my face, I was definitely in a lot of pain. I find a lot of people do quad extensions wrong. They really throw the weight around and they don't use the actual quads to contract. And that's a big mistake that I see done quite often. So here's the 3rd set here. By this point, my quads are already super full of blood. They're super pre-exhausted and they're ready to move on to a compound movement. So being careful today with the compound movement. Once again, just because of the adductor, I went into single leg nitro leg press, which you'll see here in a second. And I just made sure to keep my knee nice and vertical, so straight up and down, as opposed to letting my knee and my ankle rotate out at 45 degrees, just because that limits the amount of adductor involvement. Because today, nursing that left adductor, I didn't want to put it into a position where it would be compromised and obviously, aggravate it any further, which would impede my leg training moving forward, because Obviously, being 7 weeks out of the competition, it's vital that I maintain my exercise performance, because that is going to make sure that I'm hanging on to all the tissue that I worked so hard to build during the off season. Because when you see people come to stage and they've had an off season, but they're not really making big improvements from season to season, usually it comes down to the fact that they diet too hard and they diet off the muscle that they gained in the off season, because one, they're not taking their recovery seriously. Two, they're getting too fat in the off season, and when you get really fat in the off season, it means you have to diet longer, diet harder, and that basically means that food has to get lower. And when your food gets really low, your training performance suffers. If your training performance suffers, then you start to lose tissue, which is no good. All right, so after 2 sets on each leg on a single leg nitro leg press, we moved back into some hamstring work. We went onto the lying hamstring curl here, my favorite hamstring exercise. On this one here, we banged out 2 hard sets of 15 to 20. Sipping on that driven nutrition into workout. And then back into our second set just here. Hamstrings looking nice and dug out, which is what we want. 7 weeks to keep improving. Let's see if we can make my skin translucent. All right, now finishing hamstrings off, we moved into hyperextension or 45-degree back raise, whatever you want to call it. We did 2 sets here. We only filmed the 1 set. But as you can see here as well, no weight, just because I wanted to make sure that my adductor wasn't compromised again. So we should be able to go back to loading up the left leg nice and heavy again in another 4 days when our next leg session is. And then we rounded out the entire leg session with 1 set of walking lunges. This exercise I feel is forgotten, nice and old school movement, but certainly a nice painful way to end the leg session. We jumped up to cardio after this, and that was the leg day done. All right, ladies and gents, we've just wrapped up legs at 7 weeks out. Crazy to think that I started this prep at 22 weeks out and we're already at this stage. It's just, life just goes by in an instant. That's why living every day to your own standard, not the standards of anybody else, loving your life and doing the things that you want to do is so important, because before you know it, everything will be gone. You'll be in a hole in the fucking ground and no one will remember you. So on that note, be yourself, love the life that you live, fuck what everybody else thinks, and live every day like it's your last. All right, guys, thank you for tuning into this vlog. I hope you enjoyed my leg day, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.